Hello everybody, X here. Again to give you another very exciting video. And for today's video, there's been something that's been kind of weighing on my heart a little bit for the past, say, few weeks or so since we heard about a statement from one of these big gaming industry companies out there. And what am I alluding to right now? Whether or not it's going to be sustainable or not? Yes, we're talking about AAA games in terms of like their game development, their release cycle, and everything else in between though, because Enix actually made a comment or a statement. So let's go ahead and look at this quote here real quick. So in a quote from Square Enix, they actually came out and said their focus strategy, less mid-size, more AAA console games. And the company said this will take several years to impact. So hearing this quote from Square Enix kind of rubbed me off the wrong way. I mean, yes, it's important to make your big AAA studio games though, but it's also equally important to have smaller studio games as well, because that way you kind of have a good mix of both. Your release schedule is kind of a little bit more constant, like you have like more of a general stream kind of going on. In today's video, I wanted to go through and talk about, whether or not this is actually sustainable for Square Enix, not even just Square Enix, but we're talking about the gaming industry as a whole, because the writing's kind of up there on the walls. It's not just with Square Enix, it's with pretty much almost every gaming company out there. And I'll go ahead and break all of that down here in this video though. But if you hadn't already done so, make sure you go and hit that like button, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and that bell to stay up to date on all things video game related I feel like talking about and discussing. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump straight up into this video. So hearing that statement from Square Enix, there's a couple of little things that obviously, as I said, kind of rubbed me off the wrong way, because they said they want to focus more so on bigger AAA games versus smaller games. You heard about one little game, right? Called, Avengers, and that was, published and all of that stuff through Square Enix and all of that. Yeah, we all know how successful that game was, right? Even me, being a big Marvel fan as I am, even when I finally managed to pick up my PS5, I did not actually go out and get that game. That game just absolutely flopped. We saw them try to, slash prices down, still include more DLC expansion packs up in there, and try to do everything else in between to kind of get people in their ecosystem and maybe kind of spend some money on some microtransactions, but it just did not do it for them though. The company took such a big hit from it, they actually turned around and sold part of their company away that was actually responsible for making these games from like their Western divisions and stuff like that, just to recoup the losses from what they lost with that game. Because essentially with all the branding and all of that stuff and the licensing, with it being from Marvel and all of that stuff, that just cost a lot of money out of them, and they just have to recoup the assets from all of that somehow. These are businesses at the very end of the day. They always want to take, put the money in the budget behind what are, it's obviously paying all your employees, getting all the assets, computer, tech, all of that stuff, the marketing campaign, all of that, lumping that all together, get as small budget as possible, but, still quality in terms of what the product you're about to put out, and get the most bang out of it, the most profit out of it though. And obviously, it makes sense for you to make AAA games like what Square Enix wants to do right here, because they have the highest ceiling cap, versus if you make something like that's a AA, or you see other indie developer games and stuff like that though, those typically have a way smaller budget. So it makes sense from the business side of things to actually keep making these big AAA games. But we already saw with the history of what they actually do with these games, if they happen to flop, it can actually really tank the company down real bad. I don't even want to know where Square Enix was possibly going to be at if they hadn't had other games such as like Final Fantasy 14, which is their big massive MMO RPG that has been making hand over fist in terms of money that they've been making, all these years that that game has been out there on the market though. So it's really interesting to kind of take in mind in terms of all of this. All right, so let's go ahead and play devil's advocate right here. Let's say if these companies like your Nintendo, Microsoft, and your Sonys were to go through and make nothing but your big giant AAA games, such as your Marios, your Legend of Zeldas, your Spider-Mans, or your God of War Horizon series, or your Halos. Let's say they make nothing but those big giant AAA games. Hopefully, you kind of notice how long it actually took for these companies to actually make these games right here. So if you can only imagine, it almost takes 6 years for them to do it, depending on how many companies, on how many studios and stuff you got working within your umbrella. It can take a very long time for these games to come out and release. But what are you doing to kind of fill in those gaps? You only have X amount of studios, and I think that's one of the reasons why I feel like Microsoft has been going around and actually buying up all of these different studios. Like we saw them acquire Bethesda and then turn around and try to acquire Activision Blizzard. I think they already realized that it's just taking that long for game development. So if you had all these studios and give them all their same equal time in terms of them making games and releasing them, but you had that many studios, you can kind of stagger that out a little bit better. Even Phil Spencer himself came out in a statement saying, hey, the plan is we're going to try to release 4, Xbox first-party studios every single year. With all these acquisitions, that should definitely hold true. Honestly, it should always get to the point where it should be a little bit more than that, but at least they're kind of setting the bar because, for the longest time, they weren't actually releasing a whole bunch of games. That's, that kind of threw a lot of people in a tizzy, though. You can also look over here at the Sony side of things. Literally, in the year of 2023, it's going to be the first-party game that everybody's going to associate with, the PS5, PS4 with Sony. It's going to be Spider-Man 2. If you actually were to ask him any other big first-party games that come out in 2023, nothing else is really going to come out of it. Especially when you go back and look at the PlayStation showcase that we had around that E3-ish time this summer. Literally, that was the major highlight from that. You look at games such as that from the Sony side of things, and you see how slowly they're putting out first-party games, and they even came out in a statement saying, yeah, we did a lot of internal delays because, some games aren't up to snuff, so it's going to fall out of our fiscal year for 2023 and rolling into 2024. Or it could be calendar year, early 2025 for some of these games. I think the way how you're supposed to go, have a decent bit of AAA stuff playing, but be like Nintendo, still have a good amount of AA or just small little things that you can just throw up on your digital shop. I think that is a good way to balance it out. So that way you have your, even if you were to look at, Nintendo's 2023 lineup, you can go all the way back to January and you got like Fire Emblem Engage and stuff like that. And then you have some DLC stuff or Xenoblade Chronicles Future Redeemed and stuff, and then you can fast forward a little bit. You have a big massive game with Tears of the Kingdom, but got a little bit of a smaller game with Pikmin 4 and stuff. And you got Mario Wonder, and then you got Super Mario RPG remake, but then you got other little things like the Detective Pikachu Returns, and then you got little things like WarioWare Shaken and stuff like that. Like you got a little bit of bigs and you got a little bit of smalls to kind of accompany everything, and it just kind of feels like you have a natural flow. Part of it might have been the success with Nintendo with the fact that they're not really like in a powerful power wars with like Sony or Microsoft, anything like that, so they don't have to worry about it, and their development cycles can be a little bit quicker and whatnot. Though I think that actually works to their advantage versus Sony and Microsoft, though. But nonetheless, when you got big games like that, but then you're able to accompany with smaller games, it kind of keeps you in the top, keeps your audience entertained, keeps you within your ecosystem, so you're able to actually drive your profits up a lot more. So those are some things I kind of want to get off my chest and actually kind of talk to y'all about, because we see all these companies and they always want to focus in on these big, gigantic AAA games, though. But me personally speaking, I love those smaller games even a bit more so as I get a little older. Think about it. How many 60-hour RPGs or games that you're able to actually go through and play through in a given year? I mean, I was going back and looking at, I think I remember playing Hogwarts Legacy and maybe Tears of the Kingdom, and I think those are the only 2 games I think that I played that are like 60-hour plus. So those smaller games actually, they actually do some wonders for you. You're actually able to take those bite-sized adventures and, just experience it, enjoy it, and move on to the next thing. So I think it's just equally important to have those accompany your big giant games. So I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comment section down below, whether or not you think, these companies should focus big chunks of their game development, their time, money, and efforts, all that stuff in the AAA's games versus like your AA's or single A's or anything lower than that. Or you really do love those AA games. I didn't even talk about this. Like, Team Asano, like Square Enix's smaller division, in terms of them making like those HD 2D games like your Octopath Traveler, your Octopath Traveler 2, Bravely Default 2, as well as Triangle Strategy and Live Alive. I love a good chunk of those games. I would hate to see those go. I mean, you better not touch Team Asano, Square Enix. I'm telling you this right now. You better not touch them. But yeah, that's enough ranting for me right now. Though I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comment section down below. But that's going to basically do it in terms of this video right here. But if you really like it, make sure to go and hit that like button. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button and that bell to stay up to date on all things video game related I feel like talking about and discussing. So remember, y'all, until whatever video I make next, see y'all.